Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Hi, everybody. My name is Jenna Nilo. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach with Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. Thanks so much for everybody for joining us today. And Taylor and Amber, thank you so much for being here to present with us today. Today, we're going to talk about self-care in the new normal. But before we begin, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to turn things over to Taylor and Amber to go ahead and get us started. So housekeeping, if you could please do me a favor, keep yourself muted and keep your video off. As soon as I'm done talking, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. That way Taylor and Amber have the spotlight and there's no background noise, no dogs barking in the background, no kids whining for lunch or anything like that. And then it'll just kind of go from there. We do, however, welcome interaction. So please, please, please ask your questions, make your comments, do all those great things. But go ahead and use that chat bubble in the bottom of your screen. If you look for it now, it does look like a little speech bubble. If you click that, that'll open up to a chat window, and please go ahead and put any questions, anything in there. We are recording today's webinar. I will be sending out the recording tomorrow morning with the chat file. So any of the links, anything we talk about is going to go into that chat file today. And then also a copy of the presentation. So all of that will be coming to you tomorrow morning. Please keep an eye out for that. We will also be putting the webinar recording on our website on the Wednesday webinar page under our Learn tab. That's where all of our webinars are always housed. So please go ahead and you can always go there if you want to go back to it or anything later or see any of the other webinars we've done. We've done over the last few months quite a few with Class Intercom, so definitely some great resources in there for you to go ahead and check out. And if you are looking for PDHs, please stick around till the very end of the webinar. In that same chat window, I will be putting the link for your 1 PDH credit for today's webinar. So definitely take a look for that, and we'll be putting that in at the end. I will go over these slides at the end, guys, if you don't mind. I don't know in what order you have them. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, turn myself off. Taylor and Amber, I'm going to give it to you guys. So thanks so much to everybody for joining us. Taylor and Amber, thanks so much for being here, and I'm going to let you guys talk about things.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, thank you guys for joining. You know, this is a topic that I know Amber does a lot of, and we're excited to dive into this and talk about self-care because it's really important during this time. It seems like a long time ago we all met at IdeaCon in Schaumburg, and we didn't ever think this was going to happen, but here it is. And we understand that you guys as educators, as technology professionals, are under a lot of pressure right now. And we just wanted to offer this up to IDEA to be a resource and be able to share how you're dealing with this and making sure you're taking care of yourself. And so this is a term that, you know, we're familiar with and we're excited to share with you. But before we get started, yeah, Amber, if you want to go to the socials slide there, and then I'll turn it over to you. We'd love to engage with you on social media. So we're at Class Intercom on Twitter. IDEA has been tweeting about this upcoming webinar. Like Jenna said, we've been doing webinars over this last year with them, and excited to dive into this. But if you have any questions, you're looking for other resources, go to our Twitter account, go to our website. You can find a lot of these resources for you. And then in the chat, I'd love to, as Amber transitioned over to Amber, love to learn what role you have in education so that we can kind of maybe address some of those things. If you're a teacher, you're a tech integration, tech director, you know, administrator, whatever that is. So I'm excited to introduce Amber. She's a registered dietitian, also helps us with all of our content at Class Intercom, and started a podcast. Just is a great resource for this topic and is a great follow. If you don't follow her, I'm going to plug you, Amber, on Twitter and Instagram, and showing awesome food, especially during this time. So, and also an educator and a student. So Amber, I'm going to turn it over to you, and excited to have this conversation with everyone today.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah, it's really fun when my worlds get to collide. And today is the day, you know, to talk about where wellness and education meet. And so I'm super excited to dive into this because I know we have all feeling the pressure of the quarantine situation, and especially now as schools have closed and we're all at home, I know that that's adding even more pressure. So as we get into this, I hope there's too much of a delay in my audio where I'm getting a little bit of feedback. So just let me know as we're going. But when we did this presentation a few weeks ago, we asked our attendees about what do you hope to learn in conversation about self-care? And these were the responses that we got. How to balance work and life, school shut down, how not to work 24/7. What are some self-care tips for our faculty, staff, and students? How can I be more creative when it comes to create content, especially when we're all under pressure and feeling that stress? And how to better communicate about self-care. So we are going to talk about several of these. In terms of how to communicate about self-care, we will touch on that, but we're just going to talk about that really at the end and give you some resources for that. So this is a quote that was shared with me by a mentor several years ago as I started to transition in working full-time, and especially as I was navigating working for a school at the time, but then also doing my own consulting work. There's no such thing as work balance. It's all life. And I think that this is now more true than ever because, a lot of us are working from home right now. I know several of you out there are managing not only your own family, but now you're in charge of, working with their education and making sure that they're staying on top of schoolwork as well. So I think this is now more true than ever, right? It's all life in terms of work, school, play, and balance. So before we get into this conversation about self-care, what I wanted to do is spend a couple of minutes thinking about what self-care is and maybe, what self-care isn't. So when it comes to self-care, we're going to lay out the textbook definition in a second, but why does self-care matter? And how can schools effectively communicate about self-care, especially right now in terms of coronavirus and how we proceed? This definition here, right? This is the textbook definition of self-care, the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, particularly during period of stress. And this is so true, especially right now. And I do like aspects of this definition, especially the part about taking an active role and the word protecting. And we have to be active and we have to take that up in protecting yourself, right? And especially during period of stress, which I know all of us are feeling right now. So it's kind of funny, when you Google the term self-care, these are some of the images that you might see. So getting outside, taking a walk. I was laughing about painting your nails or going to the salon, exercise. All of these can be those textbook definitions or those images of self-care. And what I would encourage you to do is to think about, what does self-care actually mean to you right now? So think about how self-care has shifted in light of COVID-19. And Taylor, I'm just going to ask you, how have things shifted for you in terms of self-care? How would you define it maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago versus today?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a term I didn't even really realize was out there, to be honest. And I think that's why this is so important to have this conversation, to be talking about these things in our life, whether it be, mental health, the physical side of things, the spiritual. And so just kind of thinking about all of those together in one area, I think has been really eye-opening for me. I always am trying to eat right. I want to get my exercise, but I kind of like put those in one area and then put, the mental, spiritual side in a different area. I didn't think about those all kind of connecting together. And I think that's what this has helped me realize in being at home, and like a lot of you guys as educators now being at home and trying to still operate school, which we understand is just super difficult, right? Amber, I know you're you're taking some online classes. Mitch on our team is taking online classes. It's just, it's hard. It's difficult to do that. And I even know, Jenna and their team, they work remote, and just having some boundaries set up and understanding that I feel like now I'm finally kind of getting back into somewhat of a routine that I kind of felt good about going, back when we think about IdeaCon, where we were traveling and doing all that. But it's taken a while, and that's why this is an important topic. And also to reflect back on, hey, maybe, how could I have improved? I went really hard. We talked to some educators early on, and they just were in turbo mode and they crashed. I had someone text me and said, I just broke down, started crying, and I had to take a 2-hour nap, and I feel better now, and being okay with that and being vulnerable enough to share that with someone else, I think is key. And we'll dive into specifics, but, it's been a, very, as I reflect back, a very, positive experience, considering all the negative things, and thankfully I'm safe, and I hope everyone else out there is healthy and safe too.
Thanks, Taylor. I know that you also have a lot of children at home. You're managing, family and work and everything else. And, I think something that's been really important for us as a team is just this connected to each other. And I think that is also a form of self-care, just making sure that we're communicating with each other. And I know for those of you who, it's a struggle probably right now to communicate with your coworkers. And so just staying in touch with them, right? So I think a form of self-care. And when we look at the different areas of self-care, there's physical, which I think, when you say the word self-care, I think that is what everyone immediately points to is physical. So are you working out? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? It's the physical aspect. But self-care is so much more than just physical things that you can do for your body. Self-care also includes the mental, emotional, and the spiritual care, right? The things or steps that you can take to take care of yourself in those aspects. Also professionally, which, I just spoke about a second ago, but we're going to dive into, what are some of those things professionally that you can do for yourself to take care of yourself. So when it comes to physical self-care, Taylor, I know we've been talking about this in terms of, movement and stretching. Again, I know a lot of people have been focusing on exercise and making sure we're taking movement breaks throughout the day. But I think something that we've been missing in this space is to evaluate our work from home needs, because the physical self-care is not just limited to exercise, right? Do you have the right equipment to support yourself at home? So Taylor, I know you invested in a new chair, right, for yourself.
Yeah, and I'm looking for my eyeglasses. I don't have them there, but I literally had to order a new chair from Office Depot the first or second week because my tailbone I was physically hurting at the end of the day, and this new chair is much better now. But I just didn't realize it. And teachers probably you're moving around a lot more during the day, but I typically do sit during the day. But we talked about this earlier, Amber, is, I commute to work and drive an hour, and then I have a walk from a parking garage up then 3 flights of stairs, and how much that I miss that, right now I walk from my bedroom downstairs into my office, and that's it, right? So being very intentional on that movement, taking care of your body, and investing in a new chair. I've seen lots of people getting standing desks and things like that. I'll find my computer glasses, but the eye strain, I could feel that after a long day of just focusing in on a project, which is another topic. And we've joked around, hey, I took a shower today and I brushed my teeth and I put pants on before my first Zoom call, right? Those first couple weeks, I'm going to be honest, it took me till after lunch to kind of get things rolling. and maybe take a shower and do my hair, and things like that. And then sleep for me, I use, and I'd love to get the chat going here. What are maybe some apps, some different things you guys have adopted through this on the physical side? I know I've been trying to be more intentional. I'm tracking my push-ups by writing them down 25 at a time, writing the time down, just to, something I never would have done before, but just so I can look back too and reflect back and go, wow, that was really cool. During that time, I did take advantage of that, and I tried to eat a little better and all of those different things. And brushing your teeth, right? You include dental there as well. I think you got to be thinking about that. Yeah, it's not just about going out and getting that run in and doing that, checking the box on exercise, right?
Right, exactly. And I include personal grooming because, like you, Taylor, you were struggling with that. For me, when I started into my day, it seemed like I was starting at 6:30 a.m., kind of out of the gate. But then a couple hours later, I'm like, did I brush my teeth?
Yeah.
Right? Because, I couldn't sleep very well because of the stress. And so you just wake up, you're going and you forget, the simple things like brushing your teeth. And, it definitely does count as a form of self-care. So we had a friend on a couple of weeks ago who was on one of our live chats on Class.com, Aaron Davis, and he shared a quote that I think is a mantra for us around the home office, in terms of, taking care of yourself. He said, if you can win the morning, you can win the day. And so I know Taylor and I have latched onto that in terms of like, okay, how can we make the most of our mornings? And honestly, I think getting up, taking a shower, brushing teeth, right, establishing that nice morning routine can definitely help you win the day. And when it comes to sleep, it's super important because our sleep cycles definitely play a role in our health. So, establishing a bedtime and trying to be consistent on that, and especially when you're waking up, right? If you are having difficulty sleeping, we'll talk about some of those other things you can do to maybe help fall asleep at night. But again, trying to keep the kids on a routine, keep yourself on a routine is super important. I have a slide here in a second that will address nutrition, but also, taking the prescribed medications. Again, if your rhythm is off, seeing people who have unfortunately gone out of the rhythm of taking their medicines. So again, making sure we're sticking to routine there. Okay,
Amber,
so for some practical nutrition. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, and I think we're having some Zoom
okay.
issues with stuff, but the delay. But I did want to also bring up too, as someone commented, trying to be outside as much. We talked about this with some educators that were maybe feeling judgment of being outside during the day, of other people in the community seeing them, and so just being aware of that. We understand that pressure for you as an educator during this time, and so just being aware of that, and it's sad that judgment is happening, and hopefully that doesn't prevent you from being physical and getting outside and moving and taking care of yourself. But I just wanted to bring that up, that we've heard that from educators, and I think that's an important thing to at least address.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important. And when we look at nutrition, actually I have here, he's trying to fix the audio issue. Which one am I talking to?
Oh, you're connected that way.
1 second as we try to
You're fine.
overcome some of. Can you hear okay?
Can hear you. Yeah, it's just a little choppy. I don't know, guys, if you want to leave a message in the chat. If I am too, then it's on Zoom. But I know I'll help transition here while you're fixing a couple of things. I really struggle from a nutrition standpoint of eating at my desk, and having that routine with meals, being mindful. I've got my water bottle here and tracking my ounces and things like that. So I've just really tried to be more intentional when it comes to nutrition, and just trying to track it, and hopefully that continues. I hope when I look back at this moment, that those kind of trends that I'm starting to develop, habits I'm starting to develop, continue. And I know for you guys as educators, you're going to, you're at home right now, or things look a little bit different in your environment going back to school. Hopefully you can still use some of the things that you've adopted now, or get some inspiration through things like this and through this webinar.
Thanks, Taylor. Well, hopefully we got that fixed. I'm not sure if we did or not.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
Sounds
good.
much better.
Good. Okay.
Good job.
Well, it's nice that I have, a live-in IT person here with me. So
Yes,
I
awesome.
apologize for that. I'm not sure what the issue was. So, okay, so we will dive in. Hopefully no more interruptions here. But yeah, Taylor, as you said, making time for meals and being intentional is really important, because this whole situation really created the perfect storm in terms of decreasing our activity, giving us closer proximity to the kitchen and snacks. I have seen from a lot of folks, one of the things that they're really worried about right now is weight gain. And I understand that, right? Because if you're snacking all day, that can definitely be an issue. My tip here with snacks are that snacks with a beginning and an end are a good thing. So I
love that. I love that. And I told my wife that as my kids get the big box of fishy crackers and go out to the living room, I'm like, it has a beginning and end, but not a good one.
Right. I mean, there's a difference between, the family size bag of chips and then maybe the mini or the 100 calorie size bag of chips. Huge difference there. So if you are a person who tends to struggle with mindless eating or snacking in general, again, having a beginning and an end is a good thing. And then balancing your physical activity with your nutrition, I think, is important, because I completely understand that the first weeks the first couple of weeks when this all went down, that, it was very stressful, and, we were just trying to just survive, right? But now is the time when we can really start thinking about this, because I think we're going to be in this for the long haul. So it is important to start thinking about our physical activity along with our nutrition. There's no need for supplements in terms of over supplementing. I've had a lot of questions about that. Should I be taking vitamin C? Should I be taking vitamin D? And right now we just don't have the research that can solidify to say that vitamin C and vitamin D prevents or treats coronavirus. So there's really no need to overdo that. And actually overdoing supplements could potentially be hurtful, because we know that vitamin C taken in large doses could cause nausea, stomach cramps. Vitamin D, when taken in large doses, actually could be considered a pesticide. So again, we have to be careful by the amounts that we're consuming. And then eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, right? And balancing that plate. So making half your plate fruits and veggies. The other half, we want some lean protein, some whole grains. Again, just so that we're getting enough fiber, especially if we're not moving as much. So let's dive into mental and social self-care. Taylor, this is something that we've talked about in terms of just making sure that we're not all consuming ourselves in work, right? Making sure that we're balancing some of that. Journaling, self-expression, getting outside, laughing. We've tried to include some of that. I definitely had a good laugh the other night when we tried to cut Ben's hair with a Flowbee.
Yes, that was great.
Yeah. But reading and cooking and baking, it's funny to see all of the different Facebook groups that have popped up now that have focused on food, right? And focused on getting back in the kitchen, which is kind of fun to see, but that's a stress relief for some people. Taylor, how would you say that you've been taking care of yourself in the mental and social aspects?
Yeah, so I'm not, I don't write a full journal every day, but I do document my day in a planner. And that's, I think, really helped me, especially early on when everything kind of, for us, no conferences, people weren't, engaging as much, trying to adopt new software, things like that. And so you kind of look at your day and you're like, man, I didn't really accomplish a lot. And so writing out the little things that you do, for you as an educator, things were crazy. You went from having students in your classroom to the next day not, and having to plan things out. And so hopefully you were able to kind of take some notes, and also now, as you've maybe established a little bit more of a routine, I see some people that have, are getting outside and playing games and different things like that, baking and cooking. I know my wife is making almond cookies from a place there in Lincoln, Nebraska, where we're based. She put out a cookbook and is making those, and she never, doesn't bake a lot. So that's been fun. And for me, I love reading too. And so reading is a great outlet for me as well. So, and, I installed a basketball hoop and poured some cement. So something I probably I would have put off, especially with the travel schedule we had for the spring. So those are things that when I look back, that have been healthy for me and on the mental social side.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think one thing that's really important to point out is, we've gotten used to this environment in terms of, okay, so we can't go anywhere and we're all jumping on Zoom meetings now. And now it's crazy, but when I look at my schedule, I see Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, right? So we've now traded basically, the busyness before with the busyness now of Corona and the Zoom meetings that we have. So I still think it's important to say no when it's needed, and to make sure that, you're not just trying to populate your schedule just to stay busy, but to make sure that you give yourself grace when you need to say no and step away. So with spiritual self-care, this is something that I know is important for Taylor and myself, but we recognize that spiritual means different things to different people. So for us too, connecting with family and friends virtually, sending texts, jumping on Zooms, to see their face and connect with them. We know that a lot of churches now have moved to online services. I think that's been a fun way to see them innovate and get creative with staying connected, to their congregation, listening to music, right? And trying to get some other positive vibes going. I think music is really powerful and can help you do that. Prayer and meditation are really important. I know Taylor talks a lot about this. He spends a lot of time reading and praying and meditating, and I know that's been helpful for him. And reading books that are sources of encouragement. So, just making sure we're spending some time there in a spiritual sense. Right, Taylor?
Yeah, I'll add to that. So I think it's important, especially we're not getting maybe some of that face-to-face interaction with people. You can really get consumed. And we talked about, Amber, you wrote this in the do's and don'ts of digital leadership, right? You can really get down a dark path when you're following the news and waiting for that next update and just being on the edge of your seat. It can be draining and exhausting when you're seeing, when every news channel has how many cases and how many deaths from the coronavirus. Like, that's depressing, right? And you can get really frustrated, but there's only one thing you can do, and that's staying home and taking care of yourself, right? And thankfully, yeah, we do have technology to be able to still connect with friends and family through that. And so just being aware of who you're following and what you're following, I think helps, on this, again, on the spiritual side of things, and making sure you're reading things that are bringing, a positive kind of light to things when there's a lot of negative things happening, when we're focused on social media and things like that. So we really want to emphasize that and get your students to understand that too. That's the big thing. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about can be shared with students, and we hope you do.
Well, and it's so easy to get sucked in, to the doom and gloom, and, to tear yourself away from that. It can be really difficult. And so I like what you said there, Taylor, about just making sure we're building some positive influences around us, and surrounding yourself with good people is really, really important. Again, another Aaron Davis quote, which I love. He talked about his dad and how his dad would say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yes, that was, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So who you surround yourself, even though we can't physically be in the same room with people, right? Who we are surrounding ourselves with in those private conversations, those DMs, those text messages, I think is super, super important. And just making sure we are being honest and vulnerable with each other, but offering those words of encouragement as well.
Well, and I'll add to Amber, you can block people and mute people on social media, right? You don't have to be following someone. If you see a tweet or a Facebook post and it makes you angry, you need to stop following that person or unfriend them, right? Like, and that's what we, it's kind of talk about with our theme with digital leadership, and that kind of falls into self-care. That to me, that just stirs you up, and that's not needed in your life, especially during this time, right? When things are emotional, especially for educators, right? Like your world got flipped, and schools is closed for the moment, closed in quotes, and you're having to do things a lot differently. You don't need all that other drama in your life, in my opinion. So we can move on. I just wanted to add that.
That's good. Well, because I also think it bleeds over into the professional side of self-care, right? Because managing a schedule right now, I know for me personally, is super complicated. I know for the educators out there, for our school PR folks, for all of those who work in education, managing the schedule is really complicated. One of our educators, he mentioned how, those first couple of weeks, he just, was overwhelmed by the number of emails and notifications that he was getting in the evenings, especially, and the expectations that were placed on him to make sure he was responding even at 11 o'clock at night. And so managing your schedule can be really tricky right now. We actually just had a conversation about this, but I have a friend who lives across the street. She happens to be an educator as well. And she was talking about the pressure that she's feeling in terms of, when she steps outside of her home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, are people going to judge her for being outside versus being inside on her laptop, making sure she's working? And that was something that we hadn't really thought about, but wow, that's a lot of pressure there as well. So, trying to manage your schedule, trying to establish some office hours, I think is really important. And I know, Taylor, you and I were talking about this too, that, you do train people in the way that, you want to be treated. So making sure you're pretty firm about setting those office hours and responding during office hours and not office hours. Again, I understand you have to pick your battles there, but just being, I think, more mindful about that when you're responding back. Because if you're responding back at 11 o'clock at night, people will think, okay, well, they get back to me at 11 o'clock at night, I can email them at all hours of the day. And that's not necessarily the case. I think establishing a space for work in your home is really, really important. And I know that can be super tricky right now with, now classrooms are moved inside the home. The space that maybe you did work from home has now been taken over by somebody else. I totally get that. I know for me, that's what I'm dealing with, right? So I've got my husband who's here at home, and so he's working in my office, and we've had to learn how to share, right? So, but still establishing a space, where you can get stuff done. And I know we've seen some of the memes about spring cleaning and how everyone is cleaning out their closets. And if that's you, you're an amazing person. I know for me, I've struggled with that, but you can spring clean digitally. And I think that can be helpful, maybe going through some of your files and cleaning up your desktop. I think all of that can definitely help with self-care.
And I'll add, someone just mentioned yesterday, I'd never heard of this, doing a Facebook birthday cleanup. So looking every day on Facebook of who your friends and who has a birthday that day, and going, do I really know this person or not? So you could apply that here too when you're talking about spring cleaning digitally. And back to my comment before is, is this person, am I really friends with them? Do I need to be connected? I've been seeing a lot of negative things. So it could apply in that way too. And I just heard that yesterday. So I thought that was interesting. I've never heard of that, using the birthdays as a way to clean up your Facebook friends. So if anyone wants to take that, if that provides you value and you're like, yeah, that's a great idea, then hopefully that helped.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, well, as we move on here, why does all of this matter in terms of looking at our physical health, our spiritual, our social health, our professional health? Why does it matter? And I think for us, and I know for me personally, right, it really helps shape my perspective, the language of I get to versus have to. I know I have a teacher who I work with at school, and she is really, really intentional about the language that she uses. And especially when it comes to students and the language that they use, she always corrects them, right? She's like, you get to do this project, you get to do this assignment, right? Versus having to do it. And I do think that it shapes our perspective that, you know, we do get to take care of ourselves. You know, my version of self-care looks very different from somebody else's, but still, we can take those active steps to take care of ourselves. This one here, you know, allowing you to care for others more effectively. One of the key phrases and mantras that we've had for a long time, I know in my house, and Taylor has used this too, is that taking care of business starts by taking care of yourself. And I feel like this is so important, because I know a lot of people think of self-care as being selfish. And this is where we have to take that and flip it upside down, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, how can you possibly take care of other people? And so, you know, when I've talked to Taylor about this, this is where I take it with Taylor, and I encourage him to say, Taylor, you've got to take care of yourself so that you can help take care of your family, so that you can help take care of our customers at Class Intercom, right? Because it all bleeds down. So we have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of other people. And I think it helps us feel more productive, right? When we are taking care of ourselves, we're taking an active role in our own personal health. And overall, too, I have seen how taking care of myself, especially, you know, not just physically, but in other areas of my life, can lead to better creativity and ultimately better content. And this is something too, I did a story a couple of weeks ago on how baking actually can help, especially in times of quarantine, can help your brain health. Again, we've seen some studies where baking, because it's so technical, you have to think about numbers, you have to mise en place, which is meaning you're taking all of your ingredients, you're getting organized before you dive in, you know, you're paying attention to each and every step, how that can actually help your brain and help you to create better things. And so this is something that I know we've been stewing about lately here. And Taylor, I don't know if you wanted to add on to this.
Yeah, I mean, we're creating a lot of content. You guys as educators are trying to come up with content that probably looks a lot different now. You're either sending home worksheets, you're trying to do Zoom calls, and sometimes you just get stuck. And so for me, I picked up a book this week. I kind of was stuck on something, and I just picked up a book I haven't read in over a year, and it just kind of refreshed my mind a little bit. Or for me, it's, you know, just standing up. I track my push-ups, so I do 25 push-ups to get kind of just the juices flowing a little bit if I'm stuck on something, I can't think of something. And then I always love, this is why I love social media, is just to kind of, hey, what's this person doing? Oh, this is really interesting. And then taking it and putting it in my environment. How can I use this and kind of mold it into my own, or into what we're doing with Class Intercom, whatever that is. So I think this conversation, this slide is really important when you start with that perspective of I get to instead of I have to, and then it bleeds into everything else as well.
And I would just encourage you, if you had, you know, at the beginning we started this with thinking about what self-care means to you, and especially what self-care might mean today versus 6 weeks ago. Think about this question right here. You know, why does self-care matter? And why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to those around you? Definitely take some time on your own today to maybe think about this, journal about it, maybe talk with somebody else about it, because I do think it's incredibly important. So when we move into how do schools communicate about self-care, this is complicated because we know that schools are under pressure right now, and the message of wash your hands, this is still incredibly important. But we do think that schools can encourage, those messages about good nutrition, healthy snacks, healthy meals and beverages. We've seen from our local leadership, this is something that has been addressed in the media. Our mayor here in our city has definitely taken an active role in saying, hey, take care of yourselves right now, making sure, you're getting some exercise and physical activity, eating well. And so we know this is a message that schools can share too. Now, I know that some schools actually have some registered dietitians who work for the school. Now, they may be working on behalf of school nutrition and planning menus. I know here in Nebraska, we actually have a dietitian who communicates on behalf of the school in terms of wellness, and I know that's unique. So, we can encourage good nutrition, healthy snacks, healthy meals and beverages, and especially, making sure we're getting up and moving. I think those are important messages. And then encouraging mental health as well. I know that this has been a huge concern for a lot of folks. Unfortunately, Taylor, I know you knew this, but when this all sort of blew up, we had just a few acquaintances that were impacted by suicide early on in this. And so mental health is definitely a huge concern. And I think as we see this progress, it's only going to be more of an issue. So, making sure you're sharing those resources in your community where people can go, where students can go if they need to reach out to somebody, if you have faculty and staff that need help, making sure that you're sharing those resources with them as well.
Yeah, I know, Amber. I just was talking to some people that work with coaches, and their coaches were really worried about their athletes and what they were doing, and hearing that they were just getting out of bed at 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so they were really worried about just what this was doing to their bodies mentally and physically. And so checking in with your students, I know we've got a lot of elementary students on here as well, so whatever your district allows you to do those check-ins, the more you can do, the better. And I talked to a principal last night who his primary goal each day is just to make sure he's doing check-ins with his kids. It's not about what they're learning, have they got their work done, things like that. And there's some schools that are doing that, which is fine if you've got the processes built to do that. But a lot of schools are just trying to make sure, depending on your demographics too, just making sure kids are okay. And I think that's just a really smart move on their part to get through this time.
Right. No, super important, Taylor. And as we look at the specifics in terms of, what we should be sharing, maybe what we shouldn't be sharing, I would say when it comes to those messages, here are some things to think about to avoid. So let's not talk about fad diets, right? This is not necessarily the time to talk about low carb, keto, et cetera, to be sharing those messages. Go with what our government guidelines say in terms of good nutrition, right? That balanced plate is really, really important right now. And just a side note, so personally with fad diets, I know maybe some of you out there listening have had some success yourself personally with a low carbohydrate diet or keto diet, whatever it is, whatever you've had success with personally. We have this phrase in scientific research, N=1, right? So you are the standalone case study. So maybe what worked for you might not work for somebody else. So we have to be really, really careful about when we're communicating to large populations of people, something about maybe a specific diet or fad diet. I would say too, let's avoid the shame or the guilt talk about snacking or activity, because we know that everyone is struggling with this. This is an issue for a lot of people. But when we're sharing, any type of that guilt talk, or even some of those memes about the quarantine 19, right? I've seen a lot about that. We just have to be careful what we're putting on those school accounts versus our personal accounts, and knowing that it doesn't apply to everyone. Language that relates to immunity boosting or, specific foods that will boost your immune system. I have seen some of this coming from some school accounts. So again, it's important to encourage those messages of good nutrition, but we have to be really careful when we look at the language. So immune boosting, this is one of those myth busters. We actually don't have any specific foods or nutrients that can be tied directly to immune boosting. So instead, the language is immune support. So again, we know vitamin C, maybe vitamin D, eating a balanced diet, physical activity, rest, right, and sleeping can all help support your immune system. It doesn't necessarily boost it. Again, if you want research on that, I can point you towards that later. Those extremes about working out or exercise, again, those messages can be, again, maybe guilt or shame inducing. Also, they can put pressure on students right now too. So we love seeing those coaches who are out there on social who maybe are leading workouts or getting their students up and getting them active. We just want to be careful to not transition into that boot camp mentality of, hey, you have to work out for 2 to 3 hours a day. So again, just being sensitive to those messages and knowing who your audience is. Taylor, did you have anything to add to that?
No, let's keep moving here.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right, so when it comes to food safety, this is something else we wanted to touch on because we've, or at least I've had a couple of questions about this in terms of food safety and especially our food service workers who work for our schools. So there was a story, I think this came out of Missouri, where one of the food service workers was diagnosed with COVID-19, and then they stopped serving meals altogether, which was really unfortunate for the school district. So just a reminder, if this is something that your district is facing, according to the CDC, there's no evidence to support that food is a vector of COVID-19, so food or food packaging. We just don't have that research, and when we've looked at other coronaviruses, it does not appear to be a factor. So again, there's a difference between a respiratory virus and when we look at food safety concerns. So there's a big difference there. So you can wash your hands right before you're eating, before or while you're preparing food. Just practice good general food safety. So again, if your school gets questions about that, reach out to us. I'm happy to share some additional resources with you. So again, food is not a vector for COVID-19. Also, heating of food can inactivate viruses, so that is good news. Again, this is a question too. We have seen some schools who have put out information about how to wash your fruits and vegetables, how to practice good food safety right now. Personal note from me: please don't wash your fruits and vegetables in bleach. I know someone had asked me about this. Some schools had asked about this. I know our schools here in Lincoln were asked about this. So don't wash your fruits and vegetables in bleach. So use proper sanitation techniques, use proper cooking temperatures. And just as we're moving on here, I know we're getting close to the end here. I wanted to share with you a quote from Michelle Welch. And Michelle is a registered dietitian who is the district wellness coordinator for Lincoln Public Schools here in Nebraska. And this is her message. She says that, hey, when it comes to talking to our staff, what she's trying to encourage is, please don't villainize any foods, because kids listen so closely to teachers and those influencers that, they may go hungry instead of eating the one food labeled, right, as junk by their teachers. So focus on the positive approach of when you have the choice or the chance, choose the best option, which I think definitely does fit. So I like this quote a lot.
That's great.
And if you are looking for additional resources, I've shared this with permission from Michelle, and I think her contact info there is on the screen. She has created some amazing resources for staff and students. So I think total, Taylor, she's got, we have 42,000 students at LPS, and I know
7,000 staff. Yeah.
How many was it?
About 7,000.
So she's responsible to do wellness and nutrition communications, not just for the student body, but also for staff and faculty at Lincoln Public Schools. So her position, I know, is grant funded. So, you know, she does have the opportunity to do this and produce amazing content. She has materials on here, and unfortunately I can't go to the site and show you, but if you go to LPS Wellness, I believe it's .org, you can see that she has wellness challenges, videos, nutrition resources. And she has said that if, you know, your school wants to share this, just to contact her and she'll send you the files that you need. She's got some really fun and creative things. And especially as you're looking at summer content, you know, maybe doing some challenges at your school, and especially for those elementary school students, I think a lot of her content really fits well with that audience. So I would check that out, reach out to her if you have questions. Again, you can reach out to me if you want any further resources or research on some of the things that we've talked about today. But overall, when it comes to our final thoughts about self-care, I think this is the biggest one right here, that one size does not fit all. And you have to find out what works for you, what makes you feel better at the end of the day. Again, we're seeing so many comparisons right now. When you agree, Taylor, just that, you know, you might see something somebody is doing on social media, you compare yourself to them, and we can't do that. Right?
It's so hard, yeah.
So hard. And we know that there's so much pressure that is happening right now. So again, you have to figure out what works for you, right? Taking care of business starts by taking care of yourself, so that you can take care of others. And Taylor, I don't know if you want to maybe address some of this, but you know, I think it's really important for us to just take that time to reflect, right? What does self-care mean for you? What are some steps that you can take today, right, to stay healthy under pressure?
Yeah, I think we just want to have the conversation, and we thank IDEA and our partnership to be able to share this and be talking about it, because I think we noticed early on, Amber, I think, you know, right away when this all happened, we said, you and Ben said in our team meeting, we're like, hey, we're going to have to probably be talking about this. And Amber, you've got the expertise and knowledge around it. Let's be ready to have this conversation. And I had jumped on some other webinars with schools and educators. And when they just talked about mental health. And they said, here's the hotline, you know, and that's all they were providing. And so we just felt led to have more of an in-depth conversation. And it's been really healthy for the conversations we have had with educators around this topic. And they just went, man, this refreshed me. It helped me to actually think about this, because I've been in turbo mode, trying to just solve everybody else's problems. I forgot about, you know, taking care of myself. And that's what this is all about. And if we can be a resource, we've got our contact information coming up here, but just having those conversations with your family, your kids, and, you know, asking them and using some of these, you know, things that we just talked about, I think are great. And yeah, we want to open it up to questions before we move on here. If you've got the chat, we've got, blue light glasses are a lifesaver, you know, getting outside and calling friends and family. Any specific questions we've put, thank you, Jenna. You've got Michelle's email there. I put the link to that, to Michelle Welch's website. But if there's any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat, or if you want to reach out directly and don't feel comfortable putting it in the chat, that's fine. Again, you can follow us on social media. Amber, I know I've asked you this before and I don't have my coffee mug, but I've been, you know, surviving on coffee during this time, and I put some milk in it. Haven't been going to Starbucks as much, but is coffee okay? I've got some tea that I bought too. I'm going to start trying to do some more tea, but what are your thoughts on caffeine during this time?
I think it's a personal preference. I laugh because I've had maybe 2 or 3 cups of coffee already today. No, I believe the recommendation is about 400 milligrams of caffeine a day. So a cup of coffee is anywhere between maybe 80 and 100 milligrams of caffeine. Again, I think it's all about how your body responds to it, right? Because caffeine is a stimulant. So, you know, if it's keeping you up at night, if it's disturbing your sleep cycle, then that might be something to consider backing off of. But if that's your go-to drink, I think it's all about how it impacts you personally, right? And the work that you're creating and how you physically feel. So if you do feel jittery, it might be because you are consuming a little too much. So yeah, definitely. It's a great question, Taylor, something that we need to think about.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. I mean, you need to respond to how your body reacts to that. I know I've been trying to go on the offense of water too. My office has a restroom connected to it, so that's helpful when I'm trying to get 100 ounces of water a day. So,
Right.
but if there's not any questions, I think we'll continue here and wrap things up. So I wanted to let everybody know we've got a report. We reached out to the schools we work with, several in the Illinois area, as well as across the country. Early on, this was back at the end of March, the beginning of April, that we conducted a survey. And we took those survey results, and with the permission of the schools, we put together how they were communicating about COVID-19 on social media. And so if you want to pass this along to maybe your school PR person, or you handle the social media and you want to look at what other schools have done, just kind of reflect what their top priorities were, the concerns, and then examples. Some of you still are finishing out school and maybe need some different content ideas. If you go to the next slide, Amber, there is a link there. So you can go to our website, classintercom.com, and you'll see the sign here that I got, social at a distance. So you can put in that URL, and we've got webinars, one similar to what we just did here, in addition to lots of others for you, all around, what everyone's dealing with during this time. Amber and Ben do a podcast. We've got blog posts, and then that PDF is there as well. So I can put that in the chat as well, if you want to copy and paste that. And if you are maybe not a school PR, we work with a lot of school PR and communications departments, but if you are at a school that has someone, we put together a shirt. We actually came up with it last summer because during the summer school is out. And so now that shirt has come back in light of what has happened. And so if you follow us on Twitter, send us a DM, we will send you that shirt, and would love to get that out to you or your school PR person. So yeah, if you want to connect, it's amber@classintercom.com or just taylor@classintercom.com, our website there, Twitter. And we're just thankful again for Jenna and the IDEA team to be able to allow us to talk about this important topic right now. And if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you, Amber. This was fun. Now we'll hand it back over to Jenna. I did move that slide, but maybe, I think you took it. So if we need to go back to that calendar slide.
No, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Taylor, Amber, that was awesome. I got a lot of great ideas on that, so thank you so much. I was trying to put Taylor's link in there for social at a distance, and I accidentally entered on my bit.ly for IDEA Home Learning. So if you're looking for other home learning opportunities, we have tons of stuff and tons of resources that IDEA has been putting out. That's kind of your go-to place for all that. So a little bit of a few chats ago, I did a bit.ly for IDEA Home Learning. And then for all of the events that I'm going to talk about now, there's also a link for our ideaillinois.org/calendar, and that's where you can register for any of these things. So next week, the slide that's up here, next week we have a ton of stuff coming up. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, so yay you! We're going to celebrate teachers all week, and keep an eye on social media for IDEA Illinois all throughout the week, because we have tons of stuff going on. But the things that I really want to point out, on Tuesday, we are going to have virtual trivia night with Carl Hooker. So if you were at IdeaCon this past year, this past February, we did an evening session with Carl Hooker and trivia, and it was awesome. And now we have this opportunity to do it with him online. So you're going to join, we're going to put you into groups, and prizes will be awarded. So online trivia night. It's Cinco de Mayo, so bring your margarita and have fun with us. All right. Then on Wednesday, So I think one back. Yeah, Wednesday at noon, we have a, I don't know if there's a delay.
Go to the
So go to the
background.
webinar one, yeah. There we go. So next Wednesday at noon, we have Reading for Meaning with Read Naturally Live, another partner of ours, like Class Intercom, and there will be a giveaway during that webinar as well. So join us for that webinar. You can use that same calendar link to register for any of these. And then Thursday, I'll fly through this one because I know we're a little bit past. Thursday, we are doing, if you joined us this past December, we did a 12 Days of Christmas giveaway, and we did it in one day for a webinar. We are doing our We Love Teachers webinar giveaway. So it's going to be the IDEA staff coming on and doing our webinar, but for everything that we show you, we're going to be giving prizes away. So you definitely want to be there. You can only win the prizes if you are on the webinar live. So this is a not to miss one, to get the opportunity to win lots of good, cool stuff. So definitely check that one out. That is next Thursday at noon as well. So again, the links are in there. I am going to throw in now the link for your PDH for today. So thank you everybody for sticking around and hanging out a little bit over the hour, but the link is in there now. Just go ahead. Zoom took out the ability to actually link web URLs because I think there was a lot of spam stuff going in during all of the Zoom bombing and things like that. So copy and paste that link, that URL in there, and there's going to be a little bit of back and forth with some filling out Google Forms, but definitely do that and you will get your credit for the one PDH for today. So Taylor, Amber, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us. And we'll stick around for just another minute or two in case there are any other questions. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Jenna. Good to see you guys. Thanks for everyone for joining.
You too. Thank you.